You're listening to the Piano Parent Podcast with Shelley Davis, episode 376. Hey there, and welcome to the Piano Parent Podcast. I'm Shelley Davis, a longtime piano teacher and parent with my husband of 4 mostly musical kids. As parents, we spend so much time trying to encourage and motivate our kids. We wonder if we're doing the best things for them. We second guess our decisions, and we worry if we're going to scar them for life. While you focus on encouraging your kids, I'm here to reassure and inspire you. I'll be here every week with practice tips, inspirational teacher interviews, and musical topics to help you impress your kids with your musical knowledge. Parenting is not for the faint of heart, but it's much easier with support, and you have come to the right place. Well, I am delighted for my listeners to get to know you, Susan. I feel like even though you and I have just spent a few minutes together at various conferences over the years, I feel like we are fast friends. And before I pressed record, of course, we were just going 90 to nothing. We were picking up where we left off. So before I get ahead of myself, let me introduce Susan Staples Bell to my listeners. Welcome, Susan. Thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you, Shelley, so much for asking me. I've been looking forward to this so much.
And you are a fellow Texas teacher. You're in the San Antonio area?
I'm in the San Antonio area. I live in Garden Ridge, so that's in between San Antonio and New Braunfels, which is the best place to be because I get the best of both worlds.
Well, that's true. I have to tell you, this is not part of the script, but my husband and I honeymooned in San Antonio and stumbled upon, maybe we intended to go to New Braunfels, but we didn't know about Green. And so we accidentally found Green before, this was 37 years ago, before it became more touristy, and we found the grist mill. And so we went to the grist mill restaurant. Every 5 years, we go back to San Antonio to celebrate another increment of our wedding, and then always go to the grist mill, always go to New Braunfels. So that's a place dear to my heart.
Yeah, how wonderful. Well, next time you're going to come, you're going to see me.
I need to stop by and spend some time with you for sure.
Let's do that, yeah.
Well, we have so many things that I want piano parents to hear from you, to learn from you. But one of my favorite ways to start an interview is just to learn a little bit more about the backstory of my guest. My personal theory is that the way you learned and the way you were introduced to music and all of that has shaped who you are as a teacher, as a performer, and we will learn as a composer. So take us all the way back. How did you even get started in piano lessons? Do you come from a musical family or?
Oh, bless you. That's always a fun story to tell. Actually, I was adopted. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute, but I was adopted by 2 elderly parents, and they were just the most wonderful people. They decided when I was 6 that I needed to do all those things that little girls ought to do, and piano lessons was one, ballet lessons. I was in Brownie and Girl Scouts. I'm from Corpus Christi, and my mom had grown up, my adopted mom, they'd grown up on a farm, and I liked horses, so I rode horses till I was 25. I was in 4-H and American Quarter Horse Society. I was actually runner-up rodeo queen at one point. So, I was well-rounded, but they was important for me to do, church was important, at choir, all of these things were important, but piano lessons was kind of top on the list. So that's how I got started with that. I didn't ask for that. And actually, I didn't care for piano for a goodly long while. I was really good at it, and I could get by without practicing a lot. And so it wasn't until I got to be about 5th grade, and my teacher was kind of pushing these Chopin waltz and C-sharp minor and all these big classical pieces. I'm like, I don't care for it. So my parents said, what if you got jazz lessons? Would you keep playing the regular piano lessons? And I said, oh, what's that? And so there was a gentleman in Corpus named Red Camp. He was a famous jazz pianist in the 1950s. So I'm old. So we're talking mid-70s now. And he was there, and my dad actually knew him because they'd been in Laredo. They grew up in Laredo together. And so he contacted Mr. Camp and got me lessons. And I was just on fire because I learned about chords. I learned about improvisation. I learned about taking music and changing it and improvising and arranging it in a different way, which didn't make my traditional teacher very happy, but at least it kept me playing and involved. And then when I hit junior high, I got into band, and I already knew how to read music, and I already knew a lot of things. All I had to do was learn to play the clarinet, and I started skyrocketing. I was first chair. I was actually a drum major, and then when I got to high school, I was an all-state clarinet player. So I thought, man, this music stuff, I'm pretty good at that. I think I'll stick with that. History and math weren't so strong. So I just stuck with the music, and I went to Trinity University and I got a music ed degree, but I wasn't really sure what all that meant when I got there. I went as a pianist, piano performance major, but there's that classical music again. So that we weren't such good friends. And so then a new teacher came in. He was the band director, and Trinity's pretty small. He read through all the students' profiles and found out who was in band, and he found out I was a clarinet player. And he got me in the concert band, and I was already in the jazz band as a pianist, but he taught me how to be a good band director.
Yeah.
And that was actually a really good skill because I worked at that as that later. But I graduated from Trinity in 1985, and I couldn't find a job because back then it was hard, to find jobs, whatever. So I had my childhood friend was still at UT Austin, and she needed a roommate. So she said, well, come up here and live with me. So I went to UT Austin and got my music composition degree, which just was the coolest thing ever. I loved it, love. I did arranging, I did counterpoint, I did all these music classes. I studied with Rick Lawn for jazz writing, ensemble, composition. I studied with Dan Welcher for atonal and all that, modern stuff. But you have to experience all that stuff. So by that time, I graduated and I met my husband. We were engaged, and I thought, well, I best be a grown up and get a job. So I got a job as a band director in South Texas, middle school band director. And boy, was that a learning experience. But I figured out I don't want to be a band director, but I would be much better at it now. I was so young and naive, and I just never done it. So I learned a lot, and that kind of started the path on. I love being a teacher. I love helping kids. I love helping parents. I just love, I'm a church musician. I love playing at church. I just was so thankful I got to do this on a regular basis. So I married my husband. We've been married, I don't know, 38 years now. He was in the Navy, and every time we moved to a new job, well, they always needed a piano teacher. They usually needed a choir director at church or an organist or a praise band. So I've done something everywhere we lived all over the world, and everywhere you go you get a new eye, a new experience. Well, they do it differently in Florida than they did in Hawaii and Japan and Virginia, and so it was fascinating to expand my musical experiences like that. And I think all of those things shape who I am now and how I write for students, because I identify with those bored students because that was me. I don't want to play that classical music. What can we play that's more interesting, sounds good, but still learns those same skills? So I know I rambled quite a bit, but that's kind of where I come from. Oh, one more tidbit on this. So I was adopted at birth, and I took care of my adopted parents till they passed away. And when they did, I thought, well, maybe there's somebody out there related to me. And I found my birth family, which is interesting. Yeah, birth mom was a flute player, a twirler, all area musician. Birth dad is a singer, sort of a piano player, not really, but he understands. But his mother was a concert pianist.
Wow.
So I've got music. That's where it comes from. I mean, and it just means the world to me to know, well, I'm not weird. I did get these genes somewhere, and that's really cool.
Oh, a combination of nature and nurture. You have
Yes.
double whammy, and what a
Uh,
blessing
I'm
that is.
so glad. I'm so thankful, so blessed, and both families wonderful. So I'm so thankful.
That's a beautiful story. I'm so
Thank
glad to hear that.
thank
Um,
you.
I'm also, it's very refreshing to hear. I won't get too deep into my own personal story because this is about you, but my dad is a retired pastor. And so when I was coming up, it was all about church music and being able to
Yes.
for a congregation and all of that. And so eh, I feel confident in my skills now, but for years, if I just felt intimidated by people who were classically trained because
Yes.
I learned a little bit of that. I played in a Bach festival in junior high or something, but it, as far as the really advanced repertoire, that's over my head and beyond my interest.
Yes, it's so true. I was at one of our Federation festivals here in town with some other teachers. I was a moderator in for the room, and telling a little bit of my background. And she said, "Wow," she said, "she's very classically trained." She says, "But I'm a one-trick pony." She said, you can walk into any situation and do enough
Yeah,
to
yeah,
help.
yeah.
And I think that's a real good message for parents in music, especially. Your children should have a vast exposure. They might not like classical, they might not like jazz. I mean, find their interest and let them explore it, but also give them, just like you do with their diet, right? You don't make them eat broccoli all day. You let them say, "Hey, you need vegetables. Let's try this one today."
Yeah.
So it's great to have some variety and let the kid decide as they go along.
Absolutely. And to give them the tools and the encouragement that they might need. I love that your parents recognized, okay, you're not feeling the traditional course, but if we give you this other opportunity, so you took from two different teachers for a time?
I did. I did. The jazz teacher only lasted, I think, about 2 years because life just got busy, with all the things I was doing. But it was enough to say, "Oh, okay, this is cool, and
Yeah.
I want to continue." And yeah, I studied with my neighborhood piano teacher until mid junior high, and about that point, they really identified the talent, and so I started doing the prep program at the college through
Okay.
high school. So yeah, I did Hinastera and Gershwin. I did all the big. I did not much Rachmaninoff, but I mean, I have the hands for it. But I mean, it's a lot of Chopin, a lot of Beethoven. And of course during college, I had to do. I had a full recital that I had to memorize Beethoven and all of this stuff. So yeah, I did the full classical
That's
stuff.
so that's the main diet, but then you also had in your back pocket the stuff that you really, and that was enough to help you. Okay, I'll do this stuff that you need me to do, but this is where I'm aiming actually.
Yeah, well, because when I was in junior high and high school, I was in the jazz band and in school. So, and then when I got to college, I was still in the jazz band. So that was enough of that ice cream to keep me going, while I'm keeping the main diet of meat and potatoes or whatever you want to analogy. If we have vegan people, whatever main diet you need to have. But yeah, I mean, I think it was enough to keep me going and interested. And I had friends. We were, speaking of church, playing at church. We had a very active youth group and a very active music program at church. I mean, I played the sunrise service because the older organists and stuff, they didn't want to get up that early. And oh, Susan needs the experience. So anytime there was things they didn't want to do, I accompanied all of the vacation Bible school classes, just all of those things you just do because there's an opportunity, and it's what an education for the student, to get that chance. Accompanying, I mean, now they have collaborative degrees. I didn't even know well, they didn't have that when I was going through, but that's what we were doing. We were accompanying, and we were working with a whole summer while I was in college. They gave me a scholarship to be the organist and the pianist for the choir. And so I full time working during the summer, to get that. It's a great experience.
So good. I
Yeah.
love, and you never know what kind of little tidbit, what kind of little thing is going to connect with your child. So if something's not exactly working, talk to your teacher. They can get different music for you. Maybe you need to explore other possible teachers. I mean, there's a delicate way to go about that, but
Sure.
your number one job as a parent is to do what's best for your child, and you've got a lot available to you.
Yes, yes. And I noticed that because I was a band director, I focus on this a lot when my students come to me. So I've got piano students, but then as soon as they hit junior high, they're in band or they're in choir, they're in orchestra. And I'm constantly trying, because piano really is the best foundation to start with. And it gives them the tools to succeed when they get to high school and junior high and whatever. But I'm constantly like, I had one of my student, so I've had him 4 years now, and he's in 6th grade playing trombone. And so I say, this piece we're working on piano, could you play that on trombone? Oh yeah, I could. Let's look at that left hand. F, E, F, D. I'm sure you know what song that is. He's working on that for Christmas. And he's like, I could do that first position, and he was telling me. And I said, you know what? You have a little sister. She's working on this piece too. Let her play just the right hand. You play the left, and you've got a duet. So I try to constantly bring those instruments in to make band more meaningful, but also to make piano more important, because we're supporting those other instruments as well.
Right. And then what a way to make the mom's heart go pitter patter to hear
Oh yeah.
playing together.
Yes, it's the best. I have several siblings, so I tried really hard to do that, if they'll let me. I try.
Yes. So you mentioned a little bit that you studied composition in college, and that's kind of where I wanted to drive this conversation. I want people to know about your music and about the resources that you have. You've got a whole YouTube channel, and then of course your website. I don't even know where to start. Was it through your jazz teacher that you started recognizing that you could kind of do your own, make your music?
So interesting. I've been writing music forever. I started writing music when I was in high school. Like I mentioned, my friends in the youth program at church, we would have something and they'd say, let's play Morning Has Broken, but I've got a saxophone and a flute and a piano. What can we do? And I could say, hey, I'll write it out. And I figured it out and I wrote it down. And so I've been writing over the years. I wrote for my piano students. I've written for a concert band. I've written for a handbell choir. I've written for singing choirs. Just anybody would play my music, I've been writing. And so about 2015, I had some students that really bored with, I hate to keep saying it, but classical music. He had a talent show coming up and he wanted something splashy. Yeah. So I said, well, how about this? And I just played a 12-bar blues and I made it Jerry Lee Lewis style. And he went nuts. He said, oh my goodness, I want to play that. And I said, well, I need to write it down for you because I just made it up. So that's how Rock and Blues was born. Okay. And actually, it's been played in about 8 different talent shows. Not only my students, but other people write to me and said, oh goodness, it brought down the house. It was so fun. Because kids love glissandos and, 12-bar blues bass, boogie woogie is pretty easy to do. So that's an accessible thing they can do right off the bat.
You mentioned, tell me the name again, Rock and Blues, is that?
Rock and Blues.
What is he, 9th grader in my studio who is typical. He wants to play like Jerry Lee Lewis, but he doesn't want to put in the work and his life situation. He's a busy guy. So we've been working on Great Balls of Fire, but if Rock and Blues might be like a stair step or give him something visible to help guide him. I'll have to check it.
Yeah. Rock and Blues is pretty simple because it's just got an introduction and then has basically 3 verses. Left hand is the same every time. The first one is just more simple with just the melody. The second verse adds some embellishments, and then the third verse is all out, rip roaring fast, ring ding ding ding, lots of repeated notes, but it sounds really flashy. Okay. And then it follows with one more thing about that, I'll come back to that. Follows with a descending blues scale, C blues scale, so that really typical kind of ending. So the first 2 verses are swing. Yes. So a little bit slower in swing, but the third, because I love to talk about the difference between swing and straight 8th notes. That's an interesting concept for kids to understand. But if it's swing, typically it's a little slower and a little bit more lazy. But when you get fast and straight like Jerry Lee Lewis, that's straight, So this piece gives you a chance to show both, and it goes a glissando up, glissando. I mean, it's just kind of woohoo, tremolos and all sorts of fun, bells and whistles.
Well, I'm going to tag your website in the show notes, but I'll be sure and do a special link for Rock and Blues since we're kind of.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, actually Rock and Blues is one of the things that started me in publishing. About that time, I heard about Sheet Music Plus offering this program called Arrange Me, and it lets freelance arrangers and composers like me post my music on the site. They host it and then they handle the selling, and then I get a commission based on, what I sell.
And they own the copyright, so you're able to do covers of other music.
That's right. That's right. So I have an arrangement of Great Balls of Fire that's a lot of fun that, students do. And I've done Top Gun, and I've done I have 85 of those over there, Shelley, if you can believe it.
Nice.
And because that's kind of what launched my name. I started in fall of 2019, and I had 3 or 4 pieces on there all Christmas. I had a duet of Baby It's Cold Outside. Oh my goodness, cute as can be. And actually, it was right about 2 years later, as the Me Too movement came out, and it's taboo and this and that. But I had 2 moms that requested this for their daughters to play. And it's just a sweet little, don't even think about those words or whatever. It's a cute melody, and it has a perfect opportunity for a dialogue of a duet for a primo talking to a secundo, and they answer. Super cute. So that one did really well. And then I did What Child Is This? And then I don't even remember, but I had 3 pieces that kind of started it, and then COVID happened. And all of the teachers needed digital resources that they could download and have in lessons. So what a blessing. That kind of, my name took off at that point. And then that from 19 to March of 22, I said, I'm going to go on my own. So I started my own website in March of 22 and really was able to do a lot more there than I could on Sheet Music Plus. I mean, now on my website, I'm only allowed to do originals and public domain arrangements, right? All of the copyrighted things, like I just did Feliz Navidad, all of those copyrighted items, that they're over Sheet Music Plus, but I can do, the other things on my website. And so then that started to grow, and I was able to go to TMTA and conferences and meet people like you and learn and meet other people that have encouraged me, which is huge. That really helps. And so that's where I am now, sort of.
That is so cool. So I wonder what, as a composer, let's wear your composer hat for just a second. If there are parents out there who have children that are students that are also interested in composing, do you mind walking us through a little bit, like the original idea, and then how you go about? I mean, does the melody come first, or does the chord?
That's a fascinating topic too. I'm going to talk about it, but in my experience, not as a teacher for the moment, because I mean, it's different if I teaching it, how I approach it with students. For me, it can be a varied thing. Sometimes the melody comes first, sometimes the rhythm, but the most important thing is, how do I get that idea? So for instance, I have a series of compositions called Castle Tales, and there's 5 different volumes of it. And my son is a 3D video game artist. He works at an architecture firm now. He has a grown-up job now, but he worked at a video game company for a while, and he kind of not really got me into video games, but understanding that world. And I always wanted to be a composer for movies. So what's really important for me is, what mood am I trying to express or describe, or what idea would I like to explore? So, for instance, I wrote a piece called Butterflies for Jillian, because I had a student named Jillian, and she wanted a song to be written about her. And I said, well, because I was asking, and she'd seen other ones, and I said, well, what's your favorite thing, Jillian? And I have a butterfly garden in my backyard that the students come and they can see it. I help the monarchs, and we look at the little caterpillars and the whatever they're called. And she said, well, I love butterflies. And I said, what do you love about butterflies? And she said, well, they're colorful, they're graceful, but I love the way their wings flutter. And I thought, awesome. So what I did with that, of course, it has to have a beautiful melody, but the left hand is the fluttering wings. It's just D, 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 and that's your little ostinato. Yes. So that one started with an idea of, what's our topic? What can we describe about that topic? And then what pattern can we use in left hand to kind of establish that? Yes. So as a composer, I think the idea, the story, because I like to tell stories in my music for sure, like medieval video games. That's a whole cool thing. What do you need in a video game or any story? You need a hero, you need a villain, you need a damsel in distress, maybe, because I like to buy boy songs and girl songs. I like everybody ought to get a chance to play lyrical or strong, or and so what kind of adventures can we have? And those collections tell a story. So I think the story is really important, and then describing. Like if you have a child and you want to try this, a great way to start by improvising is to tell your child, what does a rainstorm sound like? So for instance, does it just pour rain? Well, sometimes maybe it starts with sprinkles. And kids instinctively know how to play sprinkles. They go up high and they go ding, 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 ding. Yes, okay. What happens when it starts to rain heavier? Well, that's really steady beat. So they can just play, doesn't matter what note, but they're just playing a cluster or something in a steady beat. What about thunder? Everybody knows thunder is on the low, and what about lightning? Maybe a smash in the middle or something. Yeah. So if you can get your students to describe some kind of topic or some kind of feeling or some story, I think they have a much better choice. Because back in the day, I only discovered this story idea about 5-6 years ago. Before I would sit down, I would improvise. I was like, oh, that's really pretty. Then I'd ask my husband, what's that sound like? Oh, I don't know. What's it supposed to sound like? I'll tell you. I said, I don't know. So it's much harder to write music and then try to figure out what you're trying to say.
Yes.
Figure out what you want to say first and then describe that musically.
Yes. And then on the performance side of it, I mean, we're wanting our listener to enjoy some sort of emotion too. I was able to interview Marvin Blickenstaff several years ago now, and he said, what is music if it's not a human emotion and the conveyance of that? And so to hear you speak of it from the origin of the music, thinking about story and emotion, and then it just goes right straight through. That's beautiful.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for asking the question, because I really feel strongly about that. I think that's really important.
Yes. And let's talk a little bit more about your music. You have solo pieces and duets, but you even have ensembles. I was snooping around on your website earlier, on your YouTube channel, actually, and I'm sorry, what was it? It was a Top Gun ensemble. And it was not just, there was a lot of, how many parts was that for? 4 or 5 parts?
Six, I think, because I think 6, maybe. I liked, in my multi-level ensembles, I like to have an intermediate solo. I like to have an early intermediate duet. And then I like to have a late elementary solo. And then I like to have an elementary solo. But then some of my kids are really little. I'll have alpha letters with just minimal melody so they can participate. So you really have, maybe it's 5, but you have a lot of options. If you're a group teacher, you can, I only have this many. All of those parts work together. And if you just have the littles, you can use a backtrack. All of my pieces always come with a backing track. You can play the backing track and let the little ones enjoy sounding big, even with just their parts.
Beautiful. And then when they come together, it sounds awesome. But then when they're home practicing their little part by themselves, it still sounds good. It doesn't.
Yes. And don't tell them, but that backing track's just a fancy metronome. Because they hate the metronome because it's annoying. But a backing track is cool. So, hey.
And then all of a sudden, I'm playing with the band.
Exactly.
Cool. You were telling me earlier that you have developed a more of a method for branching into composition. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. I started with the solos, and I love solos. I love playing. I love performing. And then the ensembles kind of came along as a request of teachers. I had some group teachers that reached out to me. I had other people that wanted to do more of that. But where I found as a teacher a niche that was lacking was improvisation lead sheets, because that's what put me on fire when I was young. And I thought, I think other kids would feel that way too, and especially the age, tweens, teens, they feel like I want to express what I'm feeling, and this is a tool that really lets them do that. So I have a method book called Exploring Improvisation. And speaking of that little rainstorm, that's in there as one of the baby beginner things that they can do. I also talk about a car ride, which is just exploring tempo. What happens when you get on the freeway? You have to speed up and keep up with the traffic. Wait, there's a school crossing guard. You got to stop. Practicing rests, so there's all these things. And then, but I mean, obviously it gets up to early intermediate, so we're getting more detail with what chords could we use, what patterns, so that book, Exploring Improvisation, every page is laid out, every lesson is 2-page spread. So one page is the concept, what are we learning? I give you some examples in music. And then the second page is the prompt. Now let's take those skills and let's do it this way. I like that format because that really helps teachers have an easy to use 2-page lesson. It doesn't have to be, I know a lot of teachers go to trouble and print out a bunch of stuff in a binder and that's all that they're going to study. I have about 9 binders that I keep in my studio because I print everything out once. And then when a student comes in and says, I don't know, I like Joy to the World, I want to learn that, and I have a lead sheet book for Christmas music, I just pull out that one page and print it, and then we write in the instructions or whatever. So yeah, exploring improvisation. I follow that up with exploring chord progressions, because as students advance, they need to know, what is the chord progression? We're just stringing 1, 4, 5 along or whatever, but there's more than we can do, not just 1, 4, 5. So I walk them through a bunch of, I think there's 25 examples on different ones in that book. But teachers were telling me, we love these. We're using these books as seeds for compositions. And I thought, oh, wow, what if I did that more intentionally? So I have a book that the next step in your creative journey, and it's 30 different skills that you need to compose. So one of the skills is, what about steady beat? I mean, we got to have a steady beat. So I give you an instruction, what is steady beat? And give you some examples, you practice. Then the next page is the prompt. It says, let's make a song with a steady beat. And the way I accomplish that is the left hand is the steady beat. It's just going to play a low C. Just keep that steady beat. And then I give you, because I'm assuming in this book, you've been through exploring improvisation, you've done the chord progression. So this is really like book 3. Yeah. I assume you already know some chords. I tell you what they are, but I give you, they're a little bit more complicated things. So, it's a rock beat, C, D minor, B flat, C, something like that, with a C, 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 keeping that drum beat, that steady beat. Another skill that you might need to know is imitation. What if left hand has a melody? Right hand is going to copy that. Call and response. It's in all kinds of music. So I walk you through 30 different skills that you need to know to set you up to compose your own piece. And at the end, I talk about, well, what is theme and variations? Take your favorite piece that you did, and let's take that melody and how can you change it? Well, here's some ideas on how to vary your theme.
Yes.
And then I have a resource section at the end, a composer's toolbox. It just gives you all the things to think about when you're writing a piece of music. You might want to, first you got to get that idea. What about rhythm? What about this? And so I walk you through those steps. And then the last thing, super important, people don't think about engraving. You have to make it look professional on the page. And most students don't get to that point until maybe high school. But, if you have a 7-year-old and if you have a PTA program in your school, there's something called reflections. Super wonderful. It's just encouraging all of the arts. Students can write a story, they can take a photograph, they can draw a picture. Usually it's around some theme. I don't know what this year's theme is, but, and it's too late for this school year. You want to tack onto that because it usually happens in October in the school year. Mm-hmm. But one of the options is composition. Nice. And so I've worked with a lot of students who have done this, and you want to kind of address the theme if you can. That'll help you. But you can win at your school level and the county level and the state. There's even a national level at this. where you can do a composition, and the younger kids don't even have to write it down. They just have to record it like an MP3 on the phone.
Yes.
When they get to be middle school and high school, they're required to write it down. And so there's lots, that's where engraving comes in. You want it to look nice on the page, but there's certain things to think about for engraving. And so I give you some checklists to think about.
Well, I've got so many thoughts running through my head that I want to follow up on. But just since you mentioned the engraving thing, something that has sort of given me or sort of loosened some chains that were binding my thought process is to give my little students the freedom to do their notation. It doesn't have to start specifically on the correct line or space.
Right.
If they just want to write the letter or however they understand it and can get it on the paper, that freedom I finally have embraced.
I love that, because when I write music, when I'm composing, the first thing I do is I pull out my phone and I use voice memo.
Oh, yes.
And I just turn it on and I just play whatever I'm thinking, or, oh, that's cool, I'm going to play it so I can remember it and come back and use it later. Then I come to my computer and I try to write something down, but I leave a bunch of blank lines, and then I take it back to the piano, and then I just write C, F, G, whatever notes I need, and that's enough to kind of get me started. And then I edit, so I'll get it back in the computer and I'll go back and play it. Oh, that's not right. Cross this note out. Do this, do that, do that. I print. I love paper. I'm old. Did I mention that? I'm old. So I print several times. Matter of fact, I got a whole pile of music right here that I've printed. Yes. And then I reused the paper for notes because they weren't good. I scratched through, I wrote letters, I did all sorts of stuff when I'm editing. And then I just used the paper for note paper. So I'm being conscious of the planet, all that stuff. But
sure. And I would say that's analog versus digital. I still like to have something in my hand. My brain holds on to it better when I've got it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
The other thing that was going through my mind, thinking from a parent's perspective about composition. Hopefully you've got a child. Oh, by the way, garbage is here to pick up my trash. So yay for garbage and whatever sound people are here. We're not in a professional studio. We're just doing it as we can. But
absolutely.
Thinking about parents who maybe you have a child who is very interested in composing. Well, we've got a perfect resource for you. But on the flip side, my experience, I didn't think I could write something out. And I didn't know the people that did write music. I didn't know how they knew which notes would sound good together.
Right.
Not
well,
was even
today we have so many tools that can help you do that. If you're an Apple person, every Apple computer, iPad, whatever comes with GarageBand.
Yes.
And kids, I tell them, you can start with a loop. That's just your metronome. Put a backbeat drum in. Get your metronome going. That gives you a style. And then you can start with one finger at a time. You can start with that steady beat C, maybe C, 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 and then let that go. And then you can add a melody, or you can add a chord, or you can add flutes, or you can add whatever. And GarageBand even has a way to see the music notation.
Yes, yes.
And sometimes, I've never printed that, but I was working actually on a contemporary Christian song, "Come to the Table," and I had an arrangement that I was playing, and I was like, is this eighth notes or is it 16th notes? I don't know. I'm just playing. So I actually looked at the notation that GarageBand was doing, and that, okay. So then I was able to go. But yeah, back in the day, I have to tell you a funny story. I was in my music ed degree and I took an orchestration class. Everybody had to take orchestration. This is 1984, Shelley. There's no recording, there's no anything. So you're reading out of a book, you're writing this, you're trying to think, okay, French horns are a fifth away, alto sax is a minor third. I had to do the transposition. I did everything by hand. Then we took it into the band to play it, and it was god awful because transpositions were wrong, rhythms were wrong. I had no way to check until somebody else played it. So that's
Yeah.
what the beauty of today is, students can play it right away. You can hear,
Yeah.
you can write it in and it plays it. Oh, that's not what I thought that would sound like. So we're really lucky in that
Yeah.
respect.
And
Yeah.
that makes me think, what a even more genius the things that Bach and Mozart and Beethoven were able to do back in the day. But
Yes.
as a student who wasn't really interested in that, maybe I wasn't interested, maybe I was intimidated, I don't know. But if I had had a resource like that, that sort of gave me a step by step of this is what the skill is, and
Yes.
this is how you do it, and now maybe you can explore, that might have opened up my creativity a little bit more. And the other thing along those lines is when I have worked with composition with some students that were interested in it, they become much more conscientious about the notation that they read. They
Yes.
recognize there's a reason that quarter rest is there.
That's right. Yes. Well, isn't that true about a lot of things, right? Until you find a meaningful way to do it or tell someone or teach it or experience it, it doesn't mean anything to you. So you're just kind of floating along. Yeah. Yeah.
Reverse engineer, if you're wanting your child to be a little bit more involved in their music and have a little bit more investment in how it sounds and how they interpret it, maybe they could write some of their own and have a better appreciation for the composer.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice.
Well, I have just so much enjoyed talking to you. We need to make another date. We won't press record or anything. We just need to catch up.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And when we see each other at conference, it's just too fast. So yeah.
It is. And you're busy because you have your booth and all of that. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell us how we can connect with you online, please.
Yeah, I have a website, susanstaplesbellmusic.com. I have a YouTube channel, same name, Susan Staples Bell. I think it's music. I kind of lose track. But yeah, and you can watch me. I'm entertaining. I dress up in costume. I did an arrangement of Don't Stop Believing. Was it Don't Stop Believing? Yeah, in 1980s. The Secundo, I dressed up as, oh gosh, what's his name with the big black hair?
Yeah.
Howard Stern
Oh
wig
boy.
with the pilot sunglasses, and I dressed up the primo as a 1980s chick with pearls and stuff. We played a duet. So I'm entertaining. You can watch my YouTube. I've got all sorts of stuff. I have Christmas music, I have duets, I have solos. Yeah, so and then I'm on Facebook, Susan Staples Bell, Susan Staples Bell composer. That's another long story, and Instagram too. But yeah, I'm just kind of all over. The website's the best place to start.
Perfect. And I'll link that in the show notes. So if you just visit the show notes wherever you're listening to this episode, you'll be able to connect.
Perfect. One more thing I wanted to say to parents is if they're ever interested in a resource that they would like to get for their student, their child, and if they think the cost is too much, I have a special code for parents because most of the resources I offer are studio license. That means one teacher can buy a book for $30, but then they might teach it to 50 students.
Yeah.
And to be fair, cost wise for me, I ask a little bit more for that. They'll allow them to do that. But if a parent comes to me and says, I'd love my child to learn these pieces, I have a code for you to make it half price at least. So, write to me. There's an email. You can catch me on my website, and I'm always happy to make that happen.
That is very generous of you. Thank you so much, Susan, for spending some time with us, telling us your personal story. Your energy is contagious. Yeah.
Yeah, my husband calls me the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's such a boost. I'm about, as soon as we sign off, I'm going to have my afternoon's worth of piano lessons, but I'm going to be able to make it through because I'm going to be pumped up. And thank you for the wonderful music that you share. And thank you I'm so glad that my listeners have gotten to know you now. And tell us again, we mentioned rock and blues specifically, but then the latest resource that you have.
Yeah, it's a composition method book. It's called The Next Step in Your Creative Journey.
Awesome. I'm going to check into that for my students too. So
Thank you
so much, Susan.
Thank you. I loved being here.
And that's the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for hanging around all the way to the end. If you haven't done so already, this would be a great time for you to hit the subscribe button. If you're listening through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite podcast player is, hit subscribe so you will be the first to receive next week's episode. I would love to connect with you. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Piano Parent Podcast, and you could just email me, Shelley@pianoparentpodcast.com.
It brought down the house. It was so fun because kids love glissandos, and 12-bar blues bass, boogie woogie is pretty easy to do. So that's an accessible thing they can do right off the bat. So yeah, I you know what, Shelley? I forgot what your question was.
I'm going to stop you because I've heard that ding several times. Do you need to address that?
It's my text message, and my son and my husband I'm going to try to quit. They're just sharing cat pictures. My son is working from home today, and my husband is in the other room, and they're
If you don't mind, I'm going to put that at the end of the episode as a little. Will you be in trouble with your husband and your son?
Oh, no. That'd be fine. I love bloopers, things like that. That's great.
It'll be a little Easter egg somebody can find.